Hello again, and we have another game here, Hikaru Nakamura against Magnus Carlsen. We saw from the statistics someone posted on Reddit that Magnus has a very good score, 14-1, 14 wins for Magnus, one draw, no, one win for Hikaru, and maybe 30 draws. So Magnus is very strong against Hikaru. It's natural that you have players that always win against you, and you have some players that you can't handle. For example, I couldn't handle people that calculate much better than me, then I would always lose. But against other players, I would get quite good scores. So let's see what happens here. So Magnus does. No, not Magnus. He does C3 Sicilian. It's I forget what it's called, but it's quite a popular system on club level. The Alapin, I think it's called the Alapin. And there are two ways to play for black. Either you can do this, and it will be like isolated pawn structure, something like this, isolated pawn. The other way is to do like Magnus does here, and I choose to play with knight f6 and then knight e5. And I did this. I chose this video because Magnus does an interesting winning attempt here against Hikaru, which doesn't really work out, and it's very surprising. So I wanted to see what computer think about that, because Magnus will sacrifice a piece here for pawns quite soon. So I want to see what the computer thinks, if Magnus was right or wrong about his ID. So this is normal. This is typical theory. This has been played thousands of times. In this Alapin variation, it's one of the main lines, and I don't know the theory because I used to play that d5 line instead. But this is supposed to be a little bit better than a bit safer for black than the d5 stuff. So we can see here that computer likes black's position quite much here. Yeah, the computer actually likes Magnus play here. So here Magnus makes the interesting decision to sack a piece here for some pawns, but the computer likes that. If he thinks that is good for black. Obviously the problem for white here is that he didn't develop his pieces. You should always develop the pieces, of course. Now they trade here, and he has to take with the queen because c1 is hanging. And Magnus took on f3 to give doubled pawns. The computer doesn't like that so much. He thinks this was better. It's interesting because black only has 2 pawns. That's very impressive that Magnus could realize that this is good for him. Because he only has 2 pawns for the piece. Usually you want 3 pawns for the piece. And he even gives up. This bishop is quite strong, but he gives up that to double the pawns and win back that. But even just this position, just going with the pawns, is apparently very hard for white to stop here. So if you just played like this and start pushing pawns, then this was good for him. So that was a very impressive, that Magnus could evaluate the position so good that he understood that this position is good for black, because in my opinion it's much more common that the pieces are better, like a piece is often better than 2 pawns, unless they are very like 4, like if you have them on the 6th rank. Like if white had 2 pawns here, of course that you say that saying is that that's even worth a rook, but yeah, Okay, so let's see what happens. But Magnus didn't play that. He gave up this one to win back a pawn. So now he has 3 pawns for the piece, and he's still better here. But it's not so clear. So now Magnus makes a mistake here, and his advantage is gone. It was important to pin the knight here for some reason. And maybe getting some luft. Let's see the main line of the computer here. What's happening? And then white should sack a piece here to get out, but he's winning that one back. So this is apparently a draw. Okay, so that endgame is apparently a draw. Not so easy to see. I would be worried for black there, but it's apparently a draw. Okay, so let's see what happened. Magnus instead pushing pawns, and this can do so that white can get out his knight here. Okay. Yeah, so he's losing a4 now. Because now white starts to get the attack here. So if a3, white is winning here because of this. So it's correct what Magnus does and try to trade queens here. And the queen trade is, this position is apparently a draw. It's just 2 pawns, but it's hard for white to queen a pawn here. And actually he gets this one also. Yeah, then it's quite an easy draw probably. Because when these pawns advances, they will just get traded, I think. So Hikaru tries that to try to win. I have to do that. White was threatening both knight here and bishop here, so has to go back. Now again, knight d7 is coming, but he has no other move than to push the pawn. Okay, has to go here. So if he gets a new queen, then I guess it's check and just take that queen would be winning for white. So he has to take back, and now he can win that pawn probably. Okay, and this is something that maybe beginners don't know. It's that if you're playing against a bishop, at least in this kind of position, you want to put pawn on the same squares at the bishop to restrict your opponent's bishop's movement. One would think, oh, that's wrong to put it like that, because it does so that the bishop can attack the pawns, but that's actually, it's wrong thinking. If the pawns would be, let's say like this, then maybe queen f6 and bishop b4 would just be mating. Then the bishop would get super strong. So it's correct by Magnus by playing e5 and f6 here. And we shall see here that Hikaru can't find a winning plan because just hard to queen the pawn here basically. So it ended in a draw here after lots of moves. Okay, so I thought that was interesting, and it was also impressive by Magnus that he realized that this is a good sack for him. It was not so easy for me to realize that, but it was confirmed by the computer that Magnus' evaluation was correct.